we're live streaming it. Okay, so they can hear you here, but the only way that the people can hear us is if you talk into this.
Okay.
Okay, so you guys have to share this.
We will do that.
Okay. Okay. So. Okay. Hello. Let's see. So Pam, do you see us? Okay. Okay. Okay, so hi everybody. Again, I'm Andrea Schauer. I'm the Occupational Program Director for this program. And the mic's not on? They can't hear it in the stream? Hello? Well, it's not a mic. It's not a mic. So did you ask that? Are there people on there? Hello, people. There might not be anybody on the stream. Okay. Yeah, if there's nobody on the stream, it's no big deal, but we'll still use this, so we're recording it.
Okay.
Okay, so today's conversation is going to be with Brian Darby, and then I'm going to let you introduce yourself in a minute, okay? And Greg Davis, same thing. I'll have you introduce yourself and talk about what you do. And each month, again, we just try to bring different topics. A lot of times it's going to be Brian or someone from his consortium, which is called the iMasons. And I'll let you also just talk a little bit about like the data centers. I don't know if any of you, I'm going to talk about it actually. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but there are a lot of data centers being built in Arizona. As a matter of fact, right now we're second in the nation, possibly going to take over first place in the nation. Brian is with QTS, probably the world's largest getting there. Okay. So, and so we just like to, Brian is really looking for talent. And our students, all of you, are really great candidates for that because of the skills that you're learning. Now, in a data center, there's all kinds of jobs that they need. IT is really a small piece of it. There's other parts of it, too, that they are looking for, but we're going to mostly be focusing on the IT piece of it tonight. And we're going to concentrate on routing and switching. So CNT 150, which is the Cisco class, this is our routing, switching, and wireless essentials. So we'll spend the first half talking about routing and switching and the role that plays in data centers. Greg is with does security and cybersecurity. So Greg is going to talk about routing and switching from the perspective of security and cybersecurity and what role that plays in cybersecurity. And then we'll also open it up for questions and really just discussion flow, whatever the flow of everything is. And then towards the end, what we like to do is just talk about employment and like, what does it take to get your foot in the door? What can you expect if you're going to be on a job interview? And then I think we'll pitch our LinkedIn event.
Yeah.
So we have a LinkedIn event coming up on Friday, September 27th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., where you will have an opportunity to just come. We'll have a panel, again, of people from the IT world that will just talk about the different types of things that you might want to consider putting in on your LinkedIn profile. So we'll also do a little pitch for that. Okay. With that, I'm going to have Brian start.
Hello, can you guys hear me okay? Good deal, good deal. So I'm Brian Darby, Vice President of Strategic Technology Initiatives at QTS Data Centers. QTS is one of the largest data center organizations in the country and becoming an international player as we have locations in London and Amsterdam. So for us here in the Valley, we're actually growing so quickly. We're building out approximately 27 data centers, and it's going to require us to have need a lot of talent. So one of the things we've been putting together is workforce development programs about how do we get more people into our industry. And one of the things we're trying to do is to break down the barriers and the misconceptions or just lack of knowledge as to what data centers are. And so for us, with our barriers and walls and no windows and no signs, that's not helping us in letting people know technically savvy we are and what we have in our rooms and what we have in these big data halls. So if you think about that room in there with all those racks, we've got thousands of those throughout. And we've got advanced systems for cooling and mechanical, electrical, and all the things that go with it. And then I lead the connectivity pieces around carriers and fiber and dark fiber, lit services, and all the connectivity elements that give you the umbilicals to get out. So there's just a lot of things we need to do. And on the IT side, we're going to talk about tonight, which is going to be around our routing and switching and how that works within our data center environment. So I'll pause there and let you introduce yourself.
Well, good afternoon. My name's Greg Davis. I am an instructor here for GCC. Been my 4th semester coming up right now. But my background is I got into IT about 10 years ago. As Andrea stated, I began my IT career working as a network operations center. So basically in that's escalation of events, routers and switches, and as Brian was talking about, dealing with service providers. If something goes down in that area, we are escalating it up to make sure we get the technicians out there. But again, prior to that, my career was in air traffic control, but I also had studied in computer science and kind of took that and leveraged after I finished my military career to go to get my first IT job. And I know we'll talk more about that, like what do you do, how do you get into a job, what are the things that you need to do, and I'll talk about that. But kind of my short story is I got into IT kind of coming in, and I want to make a foot stomp for the academy, is that did help me get my very first job. Having the background and the academy, going through the courses, I attended GCC here a long time ago when they probably started this CCNA course. But I'll tell you to this, one question that I kind of flubbed up on, but the interviewer said, you know what, I know you're probably kind of nervous right now, but really looking at your background, you've gone through Cisco Academy, you've done things that show that you built the credentials to learning networking. Come on board, we're going to train you up and do that. So again, foot stomping for the academy right there.
Meaning Net Academy.
Net Academy.
Yeah,
Okay.
Cisco program. Okay, so what I'd like to do, since we want to talk about routing and switching, I want to talk first about switching and layer 2. So what does switching look like in the data center to what you're able to talk to? And then we'll move to routing and how we're connecting out to maybe to the LEX, to the CLEX, things like that. And remember, you've got to describe the terminology because we're using slang like DWDM, MPLS, and they don't know, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have so many different things. So I lead the team that does a lot of the connectivity. So a lot of my team does a lot of the Cisco work and networking work around the data center and what we need it for. So when we think about all the things we do, the switching elements come into the fact that we have tens of thousands of racks and servers, and with that, all those devices require some level of switching, right? All those go into different switching. So we have an intricate network of switches. So we've got all different types and brands and models and makes, and customers bring their own, and that comes into our environments. And for us, it's really taking all of that information or all those data points or connectivity points and bringing all those together in some type of organized spine and leaf type framework or format that allows us to deliver, organize, and manage and support them in different ways. So my team will actually have the aggregate amount of a lot of those connection points coming out through our blended bandwidth and coming out through different ways of them getting outside of the walls of our building. So there's all these switching elements that tie together in different ways, some of it through dark fiber, some of it through regular Cat5 connections, even or Cat6 connections, and also a ton of different multi-mode, single-mode fiber entry points. So all the different devices we have, all the different things we do, all that ties together. So we have a whole team of people who manage and deal with all the switching elements of our data centers. And it's an abundant amount that we have to make sure we're managing to. So for us, it's really taking a massive amount of aggregation points, consolidating that down and managing all of that as to transversing the walls of our data center to get out. So switching is a significant part of what we do. It's really one of those things. We've got a lot of technicians who spend a lot of time making sure we're managing all those pieces, and everything from the customer's devices when we go out to do a trouble ticket, all the way out to the big aggregate pieces of equipment that they use for massive amounts of data moving to move past the walls of the building. So this morning we actually had a challenge with one of our sites where we had to change on some of the ports that were bad, and we had to make some changes to the way we actually, what port we were using. The team had to move on the fly as part of the customer was down, bring that over, do the things we need to do very quickly. So we're constantly having to work with customers on their equipment or shared equipment from us, and also always working on making sure we maintain good switching throughout the data center to make sure all the aggregation points, all the connectivity points from all the carriers are all managed the right way. So hopefully that works.
Like, let's say we have an entry-level employee, what type of work would they be doing as far as racking and stacking goes?
Yep.
As it relates to switches and routers?
Yeah, so really, when you think about it, our customers come in and they bring a rack, or we'll have a rack. We provide space and power, and customers will deliver their gear and say, rack it for us. So they'll give you an Excel spreadsheet that breaks down and shows the rack layout of what they're looking for, where things need to be placed, and what the cable map is going to be, or cable table, whatever we refer to that as. So for us, it's really taking their environment, which is that cabinet, and again, it could be multiple cabinets, it could be hundreds of cabinets. We've got customers who have multiple buildings with us. That's how big they are. So it could be a very involved cabinet layout that you have to work towards managing and building. So for us, is really bringing in technicians like you guys and be able to say, here's a design, here's what we want to do, and here's what this customer is looking to do. Go figure it out, work it out, cable it, structure it, label it, and do what needs to be done. And that's really a big part of what you do. And then from there, there's also the troubleshooting and day-to-day activity of maintaining that, like I talked about this morning. A customer's port went bad on them. We had to make some adjustments. Remote hands and eyes had to come in and do what they needed to do. So for us, it's really rack and stack is the most basic parts of what we do at the data center, but it's such an important part of what we have to do, because we're dealing with tens of thousands of those racks that you see in that room, and we have to make sure that every one of those racks is treated like a customer and has the appropriate configurations and setup that they need.
And you used the term dark fiber. Can you explain what dark fiber
Yeah,
is?
so when I think about dark fiber, it's bringing dark fiber in from the carriers, right? All the things that come in from the outside world. So all your Lumens and Zaos and everybody that brings in fiber into our buildings, they bring that dark fiber in, or we'll run fiber between our buildings. So a lot of times there's big connection points or big fiber strands that go between multiple buildings that you have to patch to or use cross connects with. So for us, it's a sea of connection points that we work off of. So fiber within the cabinets, fiber to each of the cabinets, fiber between different rooms, fiber between different buildings, fiber between multiple carriers. So we even run dark fiber between different cities to make sure we've got connection the way we want it for certain customers. So it's just managing connectivity points, managing fiber points, and be able to understand how that sea of connectivity goes together.
Awesome.
Now, and again, dark fiber is a little bit different than lit services, right? Lit is where we actually light the fiber up. So we'll light those services up. So for us, we'll put DWDM gear on one side if it's dark, and we light the fiber up. And that's what we refer to lit services or lighting the fiber. And that's where we would actually go through and do that, and we control it on that side. So we have things within our DWDM gear, which is our higher level Cisco components, where we actually go out, we get dark fiber from a Zayo, which is literally just a strand of fiber between here to there, wherever that could be, and we light it ourselves. We actually put the technology on both ends, our DWDM, and we can actually parse that out, mux it down, and sell different pieces and parts of it to customers for different services and needs. So dark fiber is kind of dumb fiber, just dark, and you do what you want with it. The lit service is something where you put more technology on it to make sure that we're providing some type of service for our customers that we can resell.
Good. Okay, and then same question to you, Greg. So, like, in your role, as a security professional in cybersecurity, let me start. How important is it that you understand the way switching works and the way a switch works? Like, what role does that knowledge play in what you have to do every day?
So, as you said very well, that's the layer 2, the layer of the switching, and that's where your end components are connected. Your desktops, your laptops, your access points, and whatever. So in the security realm, knowing the layer 2 as you learn MAC addresses, tables, and different things, those are the things that we're looking at. But from a security perspective, you need to know what are the vulnerabilities in those devices, what happens, and as Brian was talking about, connection points. Well, that is one of the lower levels right now is a switch. And so when you're looking at the connection points and trying to figure out and make sure that, as you know, with MAC tables and address tables and for security, it's a very basic component. And when I think about it and where I work and looking at security, we're making sure that that device is hardened. If you've heard that term, it's locked down. We have the administrative access to get to it. We are managing it with role-based access and different security protocols. So in that perspective, that's how from the cybersecurity world, we're just looking at it from that's a connection point and ports. And who has access to those devices? Physical security, it's behind, a lock door. Only certain people can get into that, and only we as administrators have access to that. So you're going to be managing from that level, and kind of, as Brian was talking about in the data center, where you're talking about spine and leaf and different things. We're talking about span and tree and different things. So that terminology cross. So it's kind of a bridge when you're dealing with the switches there, but you're going to learn different terminology and connection points as you go from there to a data center.
Do we know layer 2 or layer 2 switching yet?
So my class does, the Cisco class does, and then the CNT 140, which is Introduction to Networks, they're just learning addressing. So again, we could, I think, talk about addressing and the importance of understanding IP. And then the A+ class, I think you're on hardware, right? They're on computer hardware right now. So we're a little bit in different stages of things.
So,
Okay, I'll just say one thing, unless Brian may add on to it. It's at that layer 2, we're throwing out that term. I'm glad Andrea gave us an audience. When I'm talking about a layer 2, you kind of look at what you have your router at home. You see some ports on the back of it. That's where you're connecting in, where you've got whatever it is going to be your extended hard drives, your access points and different things. So those ports where we're speaking at that layer 2 level from my perspective, and in what I work with, I'm working remote from home, so I can see those devices. I can monitor those devices and know what's going on with it. And in a data center, they're talking about hands-on. We have tech support, like, okay, I can't figure out what's going on with this. I need to go and get eyes on what's going on with the LEDs that are on that switch. If it's up, or if it's down, from a dynamic. When I'm looking at the configuration from my terminal, I'm seeing like, okay, I don't know what's going on with that, but eyes on, physically looking at that device, which you would see like switch ports where you plug in the cable. That's where we're talking about layer 2 at that point for switch ports.
And let me just draw attention to what you said. Like you're able to work from home, but you've got somebody in the building with eyes, right, on your gear. So I think let's add that to our after conversation when we're done talking about routing and switching, like at home work versus in-person work, because that comes up a lot, and I think that we could break that myth, right? Versus, right, on the gear. Okay.
yeah, so for us, and I think there's the at home, meaning literally work from home, or I call it remote work. So for example, the example I gave you this morning was we had a 9 o'clock cutover this morning for a customer. The technician was in Romania.
What's a cutover?
Oh, so it was a cutover. They were having an issue with their switch in some way or some form or fashion they weren't aware of. So we needed to get eyes on it. To his point, you have to kind of sometimes go in there and figure out what's going on. Was it the cable was bad or something was happening at the device level? So we had eyes go in and take a look at it. The technician we had was in Romania. He works the night shift, so he's still up at this time of night. He's one of our best technicians. He's never been to the United States. He doesn't come to the United States. He doesn't want to come to the United States. He's worked from Romania for the past 10 years for us, and he's one of the best engineers we've ever had. So he's able to be on. So our technician this morning when I walked in was on the bridge with him. He was on the bridge with the customer, and he was the eyes and ears between those two. So we had multiple states on the call, multiple countries on the call, and he was the hands that was charged with switching the port, rolling the cable, and letting them know what he saw because the switch was not performing properly. So that's an example of how you engage in the importance of knowing the equipment, knowing hands-on, and be able to be that technician. You're a primary part, you're an important part. So when gentlemen like this are out there thinking through and doing all they can, but when they can't get to that, they need somebody that's on site. And it's so important to have a technician who knows and understands what's going on.
So I know this is kind of hard to see, but let me just.
I love the pointer there. I love that.
I know it's a little hard to see. Okay, so if we think about like the people that are in this classroom right now and how it relates back to where you're at, right? So the A+, you're kind of out here on these end devices. So you're starting to learn about how to build computers, break computers, put software on computers, operating systems, hardware, things like that. And then as we move in, right, come into the access layer, so the CNT 140 and 150 students, you're kind of like starting to learn about coming into the network. So here are our switches, right? And then in that class, we keep learning even a little bit more, and we'll start learning about layers 3 switches and about routers, so layer 3 routing. And again, that's why we're kind of talking about routing and switching today, because of the routing and switching class. But even these end devices, like, they're totally dependent upon what happens in the network, right? Everything is dependent upon the network, whatever that looks like. And then I'll just throw up a picture, this is even harder to see, of a data center, because I don't know if I can blow it up. There we go. So here's just kind of a little bit of what Brian is dealing with, but imagine this times 100, right? So the way that we think about our networks is layered, right? We have the access layer, which is kind of where we're at, the distribution layer, and then the core layer, where we're talking about like our Lumens, our Verizons. What is the company you mentioned?
Zayo?
Zayo.
Zayo's another carrier.
Okay, I've never even heard of Zayo.
Really?
Yeah,
Zayo's
Zayo,
another
right, Cox Communications. So again, just to kind of give you an idea, and one of the things that I told my class, and I think it would be a good idea for everyone to kind of think about is, when we're learning, we're just learning this little bit, right? Like, you have a computer in front of you if you're an A+, and you're learning about that computer and that hardware. My class, if we're building a network, we're building like one router, you know, 2 switches maybe, and a couple PCs. You gotta think bigger though, right? So it's just because we don't have the capacity to teach you on something like this, but every time you're doing a lab, every time you're working on the PC, imagine like scale, right? Imagine the scale at which you would be working if you're out in the field, in the industry, okay?
That's a great point.
And I didn't say any of that in the mic.
I think they heard you though.
They
sometimes
heard
they-
me, but
oh, the people
not on
that-
the, yeah, okay. Well, okay, let me start again, just joking. Okay,
Question?
yes, question?
But the virtualization for labs, is it possible to kind of set up your own big server so you can kind of see what scale is at?
So your question, you're speaking to about virtualization that is going on with routers and switches. Is that your question is about?
Cisco, I can't remember what it's going, but basically it's a way for us to test the lab virtually before we do it in person.
Packet tracer, talking
Okay.
about packet tracer.
Okay.
Would it be possible to kind of set up your own server to kind of see how it is in Packet Tracer?
Yes.
Yes, you can. And again, with a tool of packet tracer or simulation or virtualization, or if you have your own, you know, urge to go out and get your own routers and switches off eBay and stuff, anything that you can do. I have.
That's how we used to have to set up our own networks.
Right.
We didn't have the tools that you had.
Right.
We had to set up our own network. So all of us bought stuff off of eBay.
Yeah, you buy it off eBay, and now you have virtualization where you can get these things through Packet Tracer and different virtualization software, and you'll build your server and you can put a virtualization of that. So yes, you can scale this as you learn and go through your courses to whatever level you want to take it to, and that's the beauty of adding on to the course that you learn or where you're at in your studies.
But I think there's something to be said about having hands-on experience.
Yes.
Right. I think one of the things we look for when we bring people in is that, have you touched a hardware before? And that gentleman this morning that I tell you about used to be a security guard 3 years ago, and now he's helping and being a major part of our data center and what we do. And he's very confident and comfortable now doing those things and rolling cables and being on with technicians that are 20 years older than him, because he's got experience, hands-on experience of doing this. So he understood what that looked like. He can command the call and say, hold on guys, that doesn't look right to me, stop. And he did that this morning because he's comfortable with that and he knows the site, he knows those things. So I don't want to sound like I'm against those things, and I don't want to sound like I'm the old guy in the room who's against the technology, but there's something to be said about hands-on experience and knowing and touching the equipment. So I would just say if you can get experience with both, right? Be able to build things in the virtual labs, but also if you get an opportunity, be able to rack and stack, be able to put hands on. It just makes a difference, and you'll just find that there's some nuances around things that you're just not going to get from the simulators, at least in my opinion.
I agree.
Any other questions?
Well, it's kind of about like working from home. Did you want to say that for later? I can ask right now.
You can ask now.
Yeah, go for
I
it.
was gonna save it for later, but let's ask, yeah.
So I'm kind of confused. My uncle works from home too. He's an IT. It's just like, how are you able to like figure out like what's wrong in the system, like a security breach, like without having it physically in front of you, like just a screen? Like, don't you need to like physically like see what the problem is?
From a remote perspective, so we never lose what is the basis of what we do. So port security remote is the same thing as port security when you're actually there. But your question is, how would you know? So there's different departments, like I work for a network operations center. There's a security operations center too. So there's constantly teams and scans that are going on. For instance, like we can get a call from the security operations center. Hey, we're seeing a lot of broadcasts coming from an IP that we don't understand. So they kick it over to a network operations center analyst and they say, okay, we'll go and look at it and see whether that IP address is in our space or if there's some device on our network. So what I would identify is like, we don't know what that IP is. So now we start to search this down to try to figure out if it's a breach or something that we're not managing. So does that answer your question of how you can see it? Because you're not totally disconnected. When I worked on site, it's just that I'm not near that equipment. We've got equipment all the way around the world, across the continental USS and overseas too. So there's equipment that I don't see. But as Brian was saying, it's definitely I've been into the racks and see the equipment. So when I'm talking to someone about something, I was like, oh, I know how that is when you have a cable that's just not there, but you see some bits or something on your network. Remotely, those are the things that you're going to recognize and see. Experience and time. I mean, you're going to.
Time just because you're at the site doesn't mean you see what's going on in the layers of the equipment. Like there could be things going on right now that we just can't see. You're not going to see them physically. So there's things you're going to have to dig into the equipment and see. You know, if you had a broadcast storm, you wouldn't be able to tell that you're being hacked right now, right? You wouldn't know that. So you're going to the tools, the systems, the monitoring, all those things are going to give indications. And guys like this will call and get you out there to go, you know, disconnect that, unplug that, figure that out. You know, he'll be able to pull you in at that layer 1, layer 0 level as to what to do with that device. But you have systems and tools that'll help you identify that. Just trust me, in all of our data centers and systems, there's alarms and bells and whistles that go off, probably wake people up at night. So there's a lot of different monitoring tools out there that do a lot of this stuff.
Well, and in our class, like when you move into a Cisco class or a networking class, you also start to learn about terminal emulation programs, right? Like TerraTerm, SSHing into devices. So, you know, there are ways to not only have software tools that do that, but then you as a network administrator or a network security officer, you may be using SSH to access your devices, right? Setting up VLANs and things like that.
Yeah.
So.
And that's on the layer 3. We start to get to more of a higher level
Yeah.
routing and switching. I remember my first switching event or layer 3 switching was like router on a stick, and that was like back in the day. And I know no one else in here understands that, but it's
No,
running,
they will,
oh,
because we
really?
do that. We're doing that next week.
Yeah, so it's really just a way of using your router as a switch, right? Giving an IP address on each side and run from one switch through the router back to the other. So it was kind of a poor man's routing solution, but we had to do that back in the late 90s.
Yeah, but it's still really common. You know, absolutely, because especially for smaller networks, if they already have a router, why buy more? In a data center, you're not going to see that. But in your smaller businesses, it's still very popular. Yeah, it's inexpensive,
it's
it's
a creative way. If
easy.
you understand how networking works, you can do those creative things, and that's problem solving,
Yeah.
right? And there's nothing wrong if that router can support it. I did it on a 3620 back in the day, so they don't even make those anymore. But so yeah, it's just learning how your network works, learning layer 2, and then of course layer 3 switching and what that looks like, and then they were able to do it on router or switches, right? You're able to do layer 3 switching at your switch level, which is really pretty cool.
Yeah. So why don't we jump into routing then? So with switching, right, that's our layer 2. Now you've talked a little bit about layer 3 switching, which we haven't hit yet. In my class, we're doing that next week.
Oh, okay.
So next week we start talking about inter-VLAN routing. So we'll be doing router on a stick. We'll be doing layer 3 switching. So when the data is moving, right, it moves through the LAN and then it moves out to a router so that it can be distributed, right? And again, so like, what role is routing playing in a data center? How does the data get from the data center out, or how does it get out in? Right? Can you explain some of that? And again, just keep in mind terminology. You might have to explain what some of it is or break down the acronym.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so for us, that's the big piece, right? So everything
Yeah.
that we do, our team brings it in. So if you kind of think about the layer 2 is happening within the data center. Everything you want to transverse your network and go outside has got to be some layer 3. It's got to be some IP addressing, and that's where it gets a little more complicated. So we've got a team of people who manage to that, right? It's the routing protocols. We use BGP. We're a big network, so it's just being able to start to build that layer 3 routing pieces. at the different levels, and we have that in our switches. So we use very massive switches, the Cisco biggest devices they make, and I forget the name of which series it is. Yeah, 93, 90,
The
yeah,
9300.
yeah. So either way, but they're massive devices that the team uses, and that's what we use for a lot of our routing. So all that aggregate layer 2 stuff and layer 3 things, all that stuff goes back as you think about transversing the network and all the connectivity points I was talking about earlier. All that has to go through our routing teams as to making sure it's the right routing. So one of the things we're working on now is, moving some IP address out of our IP address scope over to BGP. Those are all things you'll be very familiar with as you start to do bigger network routing, right? How do we think about, bringing ourselves, yeah, there you go. So how do we think about, I know we got 3 of them, we got to move. So I remember how my back hurt from those, but it's really just thinking about how do you do more sophisticated routing at the edge to allow that type of major amounts of data to be transversed out the building. And that's what that routing does for us. So that's kind of how we think about it. We typically just have, individual points from each of the customers. So customers may have one rack and they've got their own router and they got one connection from Lumen. And that's the way they do it in their rack. And then sometimes they come to us and buy aggregate bandwidth, bigger amounts of bandwidth to go outside, and we manage that. So it's just different ways in which you do it. Some of it, again, is at the small router level with just individual routers and one connection, or it could be massive amounts of data. We move 75 to 80 gigs total in some of our data centers, and it's just massive amounts of data we're trying to send out as part of our aggregate product. So.
And my group will be doing aggregation in module 6. Okay.
Oh, and to add on what Brian was saying, as far as that edge, and as he was speaking, I was thinking about from us, we are a government agency, so we have like an interim kind of data center, but we have all our facility sites out there across the U.S. And so I'll say pick a site, BYB, and they've got their router, it's getting their data off of the LAN network there, the local switches, getting into the router. Now it's got to get out and keep going, because if they want to go cross-continental or out, it's going to hit what they call the provider's edge. So you got your customer edge router, which they manage, and they are putting their routing tables in and running BGP or OSPF to say, we're trying to get our traffic off. Now it's got to go head in. Basically, your traffic's going into what we have as a data center. That data center now has got to go out to somewhere. We're going to go to, cloud computing or go out to some other data center, kind of where Brian is working. So you see how this is transversing from, a local level to a customer edge router, to a provider edge router, and it's just like connection points. Keep connecting and going across, moving your data. And so from that perspective, as you learn how it works, at the levels down at a site, as it gets bigger, you're learning the protocols, the BGPs, and different things that are moving big data and aggregates and pipes that are coming in, and the big switches that are at the data centers that are moving this traffic, because it's a lot. We've moved very vastly from, needing small hard drives and small bandwidths, T1 that were T1s like, oh, this is great, we're good. Now we've got data, we've got video, we've got voice, we're transferring huge files. So this is where we, as IT personnel and working, we are moving this data across and knowing all these levels, how it moves into data centers and how we get there back and forth with the service providers that we're talking about, AT&T or Sprint or whatever. This is all the fiber and different things that you're going to be dealing with, and knowing these things on a very basic level, no matter, as for my pitches, it's the theory is still there. It hasn't changed. We have not figured out how not to use layers 1, 2, and 3. Don't think we are at that point, but it always works. So when I'm troubleshooting, I get on a call and we're like, okay, we got this application, it's not working. And okay, we figure out what's going on down here at the layers, and we figured out, okay, we've got connectivity, wherever. So now we're moving up, we're getting to the router. We're looking at the router table, don't see anything in the logs. We don't see anything going wrong with the protocol we're looking at. So now we're moving out. And as we try to figure out where that choke point, break point, or latency, jitter, whatever is happening, we started out as all these teams that we're talking about. We're piecing out to try to piece out where this is breaking. But when this all works beautifully, it goes through those layers again. And you will not forget that, because it's a very prime piece of learning. Even when you get into routers, it's the same. You're going to always go back to your basics of the layers 1, 2, and 3, getting to routing, and as definitely your techniques, your skills that you learn. You're going to specialize in certain things. Certain companies are going to have different applications, or runs BGP or OSPF. So that's the picture, kind of where I look at it a day to day. I'm still using those things that you learn at your layers also in the routing.
Okay, so let me just clear something. So both of you have used the word BGP, okay? So it's a border gateway protocol. And so again, for my class, right, for the CNT 150 or any of the Cisco students, one of the things that we're going to be learning about is routing and routing protocols. And routing is the way that data is moved out there in the remote world, right? In the remote world. So like in here, these computers can all talk to each other on a local area network, so they're able to communicate. But if we want to be able to like get out that door, right, and get to a remote location, then we have to have a protocol that does that. So there has to be like a mechanism. And BGP is one of those protocols. There's actually a couple different kind. They're primarily dealing with BGP because of the size of their networks. The other ones, like if we were to just look at this picture again, I know again you can't really see it, so I'll just point it out. But like here we have OSPF, so Open Shortest Path First. That's another type of dynamic routing protocol. So again, this is the types of things that having that knowledge and that vocabulary will help you a lot. And it comes with time. It doesn't happen overnight, right? It doesn't happen overnight.
It
So
comes from doing it.
Yeah.
I think to just piggyback on what he was saying, you'd be surprised if you went to our jobs how much we use the term layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3. Like it's all throughout the day. Like we sat there this morning and it was layer. What is he doing on layer 2? We actually call things layer 2. We were like, oh, Packet Fabric is a provider of ours. Oh, they're our layer 2 provider. So you'll be surprised at how much we say that. That
my
is so
students
true.
won't be surprised
They
at
won't
that,
be.
will
They
you?
won't be. They won't be surprised. But we use that terminology, and I think to his point, and just to bring it home even harder, it is the foundation. So it's something that you're not going to go, well, I didn't use that. You will use it. Guarantee it. So as you go into the networking, that's the foundational thing. So this morning it was, hey, what's going on to layer 1, layer 2 layers? And that's where we need Zach. So we had to get Zach there to get out there and take a look and see, hey, roll that cable, figure it out. That something's not right with that jumper. Figure out what's going on. Why is that port not coming up? And they couldn't get the port to come. They bounced it and tried what they could. So it's all those things that you talk about, and it just, you're amazed at how much we use those terms. Layer 1, layer 2, you know, all the time, layer 3. So.
Yeah. And for my 140 students that are in here, what they're talking about, layer 1, 2, 3, so like Miguel, that's the OSI model, and that's what we're doing next week. We're digging into the OSI model. So again, for the introduction to networking students that are here,
So they
that's.
don't know the OSI yet? So no one in here
Okay.
can tell me what the OSI is?
Oh, yes.
Oh, we got somebody right there.
No, the 150 students can, yeah. But the 140 students, we're just digging into it next week. So this week, we're learning network addressing, VLSM,
Okay.
how to find a network address, the address ranges, the default gateway. And then next week, the introduction to networking, learn the OSI model. The A+ class touch on the OSI model, not with the great amount of detail that we do in the Cisco class because of how it's needed for troubleshooting and building out your networks.
Do you
Yeah.
use the pizza now?
I don't use the pizza analogy.
talking about?
Yeah,
Okay,
sausage
who knows?
pizza.
Who said that? You know? There you go.
Yeah.
If I had something to give you, I'd give it to you.
Yeah,
That's right. That's the way I remembered it.
we do. All people
You say
seem
that?
to need data
There you
processing.
go. I heard
There's a
that. I
bunch
like
of,
the pizza one. Can
there's
you say
a-
it louder, just
yeah.
for everybody?
yeah. And then there's also a Paula Abdul one.
Yeah.
Does anybody know the Paula Abdul one? Does anybody know who Paula Abdul is? Other than
dating-
us,
dating
other than
ourselves,
us.
yeah.
Okay, yeah,
So-
there's a really
well-
good Paula Abdul one.
They should know. You know the gentleman that just called that out. You know the actual OSI, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, say it. Oh, come on. You,
He knows
ahead.
it.
Physical, data link,
no.
transport.
Go ahead.
Application, presentation, session, transport.
That's only four. You're starting from the
It's
top.
the pressure.
Yeah. Physical. Yeah. Physical data link network transport session application. There you go. All right. Yeah, that's all right. You'll figure that out. So yeah, and what I've never gone anywhere above 4. So just don't even worry about those.
In the data center, yeah. But you probably have to go, right?
Have to go
So,
to that part, and definitely to that point, as I was saying earlier, when we've got now stuff that's in the cloud, and we've got applications, and then the cloud course I also teach here, you get into security gateways, which is basically firewalls and different things that protect the data. But yes, you know, as an network and operations center, that job is basically, as Brian was saying, we're sitting there, we got something that's going to trigger that says something's going on, somebody's monitoring something, something's broken. We go back through those layers, you know, 1, 2, and 3, what's going on. Let's make sure those are solid, and then we can move up. Because many times we'll get a customer, as from my perspective, like, okay, something's wrong. The network's broke. Nothing's working. And it was like, okay, well, let's look at this before we call panic and say everything's broken. And we see data going across. But, you know, you're going to go through those, as we call it when we get on a bridge call. Bridge call means we've got a bunch of people, IT people, application people, DevOps, all of us are there, and we start to clear out our pieces to say, okay, we don't think it's at this layer. We don't need this. We may need to bring somebody working on, you know, from the service provider, or we need to get the data center on and make sure that everything's going there. So in this bridge, we're all, you know, coming together to solve this issue.
There's never arguing.
No, never happened.
Yeah.
And so we're there solving this problem. But again, to the point is knowing those layers and where we go. Again, when I first started, I was like, okay, I'm just here. That's level like 1, 2, and 3, and that's kind of where I'm at. Now you're going to expand your knowledge when you're talking about these things and applications out there, virtualization and different things that happen. You're now going to go into those layers and learn that, and definitely you're going to build your expertise. So it doesn't stop, but definitely as you build your skills here in the courses, it's going to help you as you progress in your time and what comes on hand as needed.
It's really being able to troubleshoot,
Yeah.
being able to do it calmly and methodically, right?
Right.
Being able to rule things out. And I think that's one of the things that we had to go through today. And listening to Katam, who sounds like the Terminator from Romania, he just says things like, check the cable. And then, you know, Zach goes over there, checks the cable, rolls it, says, okay, get a new fiber. And, you know, it's just figuring these things out. He started at layer 1 and basically worked his way up. And he's like, well, okay, what's going on at the physical layer? Then he went ahead and did the next layer. And he was like, what do I see? So he was triangulating what he was hearing on the call from the application people to what he was being told physically and to what he was seeing from the screen. And he was basically making decisions around that, walking through it methodically to say, here's what we would need to try. And in 15 minutes, they came back to it. So just what he was saying is what happened this morning. But you have to be calm. You have to be able to articulate what's going on and be able to be clear about what you're seeing. And you have to be able to think through things quickly and methodically and not chaos, right? We've all been on the calls where people just lose it, right? And it's like somebody can't handle the pressure. It's 3 a.m. and you got 25 people on a call. You have to be able to think through things methodically. And that's not always an easy thing to do. Question? The transmit and receives. So in other words, we ran a fiber cable that was about 50 feet from one end for the data center to the other, and he said, hey, what's going on with that cable? Is there something wrong with that? Do you need to roll that? Because we just did a cut over from one port to the other, and he used a different cable. So there was a lot of things going on, and he just said, roll that. In other words, to transmit and receive to see. That's a common thing. We do that sometimes when we had a cut over, and next thing you know, it's like, oh, well, we're not coming up, roll it, and they roll it, and it comes right out.
okay, that's in the fiber world. That's the version of, did you turn it off and on?
Yeah.
Okay, it's
Yeah,
like, did you roll the fiber?
Yeah.
Did you just unplug it and roll
That's
it?
the
Did
first
you-
thing we try.
Yeah.
Roll the fiber, and just say, and the next thing you know, it pops right up. So, or not. Yeah.
You heard the term Brian said earlier, he said bounce it. And
Yeah.
Did anybody
Yeah.
does anybody know what that means when we say bounce the port?
Yeah. Oh, you don't? Okay. You do.
Yeah. So we shut the port. That's
Yeah.
the slang. Shut
Shut the
you know,
port. Shut, no
on and
shut.
off.
So in
Shut, no
the,
shut.
Yeah.
shut, no shut in the Cisco device, and that way you bounce the ports. In other words, just
So you hear these terms bounce
yeah,
the port, roll the
reset,
Yeah.
yeah, roll the
And-
cable. Yeah, so listen, some of this is not like some perfect science. It's
Right.
like, what are you doing? I don't know. Go try that. So
Yeah.
especially if it's not production, right? If it's not production, then you can do these types of things. And sometimes you're in a window. So just to give you a little context around how we work, we're within a maintenance window. So within a maintenance, like this morning was an issue, so there was a trouble issue. But we'll be within a maintenance window, and we've got a 2-hour window. So the customer knows their gear is down, and we've got things turned off, so we're bringing it back up or doing something for them, and that way you have time to do it. So sometimes it's a little different scenario. So it's not like, okay, so roll the cable, figure that out. We got an hour left. Let's figure this. You know, so sometimes it's very different. So it depends on what circumstance, situation you're in. Does somebody have oh, you had a question?
This is
Data centers.
data centers.
Yeah.
How do you cool down the systems internally?
Oh, electrical
That's a
mechanical
good question.
Yeah, so,
And I think, talk about our data center program.
yeah,
Because
so
that would be in there, right?
we've actually got a technician's program for electrical mechanical, so running the data centers, which is not IT related, but is more or less the electrical mechanical technologies and electrical distribution. We bring substations into our own data center, meaning we build our own substations, so our buildings are that big. So we have enough power to produce, power tens of thousands of houses. So 240 megawatts is what we have. So this gives you some understanding as to the scope and scale of how big these sites are. So cooling is one thing. We do hot aisle, cold aisle. So just like you see in there, there'll be air blowing up through the front, cool air coming out of the floor. A pressurized room, and you have cool air coming in and gets taken into the devices to the intake and expelled as hot air out. So that's the way we do it. And as the hot air goes back into the plenum and gets recycled. Yeah. Good question. Any other questions? Network is Yeah,
The
the port-
interface is flapping.
a port. Yeah.
Port is flapping
yeah.
up and down, or
You'll see that sometimes.
you'll see that happening. And kind of on this point where we were talking about, the power and the cooling, and you still are going to get that, when you're outside of a data center. So one thing that we'll have is like, okay,
Right.
this equipment, something's down, and we're not there. I'm here in Arizona. This equipment is somewhere, out in California. So I need what I call a power and equipment check. I need somebody to go in, make sure that device, if it's connected to, it's powered up. LEDs are green, everything's flashing, that type of stuff. Go over there if we need to, power cycle it. That means just turn the power on, turn it off, and reboot it. So these terminologies and techniques that we're talking about, and to add on to it is, as you progress in your career, you think, oh, all these things, as Brian said, this is in the back. You don't use that. No, these mechanics and foundation of things and techniques and processes that you learn are pivotal to everything that you do. It's not like, okay, it's going to be this just astronomical problem. We're not going to figure it out. We need to, defer to some, somebody in the think tank. No, this is us. The more you do it, the more it's going to become habit to you. And as he was saying, his gentleman that works over in Romania is like, he's talking about roll the cable. These things he's running through his head because he's experienced these. Some things are going to be like, oh, this is kind of familiar to something that I've done. But it doesn't mean it's the problem, but you process through it. Your troubleshooting skills, as you build those, you're going to use those same techniques. A lot of times it gets asked, what is the kind of the golden ticket to becoming the best technician? Practice, practice, practice. You're never going to get around it. If you're going to succeed and not be kind of the person that draws back from these troubleshooting problems, you're going to have to practice. And failure is not something that we're going to go out there and break it, but you've got someone there to mentor you, to help you, to show you those techniques. So practice, 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 and that kind of stuff.
I want to add a couple things onto what both of you have been talking about. So one thing that I want to say is you had brought up the window, your maintenance window. And am I right to assume that much like what I would deal with, we would have like maybe a 4-hour window? And if we didn't have something up and working within 4 hours, we began to get fined. Or we would pay back.
SLA, yeah.
Yeah, so again, just so that I want you kind of aware of some of the stuff that goes along. And a customer will pay for a certain maintenance window. Like you might negotiate, like, look, you have to give us a minimum of 2 hours or 4 hours. And after that, depending upon the SLA, the MOU, whatever your company calls it, that company may be having to pay. Right, so that's why it's important to kind of have this troubleshooting methodology. And we do some troubleshooting in our classes. And one of the things I want you to talk about is, okay, so first of all, one of the things I notice, students typically go for the hardest thing first. So what I want you to hear, what they're saying is like just unplug and plug it back in first, turn it off and turn it on first.
Yeah.
Start with the simplest things, right? And then documentation. Can you talk about documentation? Because how I am.
Yeah, it's so important. And I would say, a lot of it, when we do a maintenance window, is the planning ahead of time. So it's not just going in and start unplugging stuff. Like that never works out good. So you go in and it's planning. So you have to go in and plan everything. So we pre-run cables. We make sure that we've got the cables are tested, right? If you're splicing your own fiber, which is something that some of the organizations do, we get a big roll of fiber and we end up crimping the end and splicing it and then testing it. Make sure the cable's tested properly. In other words, we may also have a port brought up and ready just in case. So in other words, hey, let's bring that port up. Make sure that port is already configured. Make sure sure it's tested. We'll have times where we actually have people peer review it. So, hey, I did the config on that switch that they're looking for. Make sure that somebody takes a look at it and takes a look at the configuration to make sure it's right. You just would rather just plan before you get there at 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's like, well, we don't have that. We got to call and wake somebody up to do the layer 3 or something on there. So it's just really going through these things, and more mature IT departments will have those processes in place and be able to start working through building that type of muscle to be well planned about some type of a maintenance or outage or new equipment or anything. And then I think there's also doing it very methodically, being able to say, like we did a couple cutovers for some routers, and we actually left routing on the old router while we brought up the new router, and we left it there for a week, and then we moved the routing over. Like, sometimes it's better to be right and not have issues. So it doesn't always have to be like all at once in some big brutal nighttime event. Sometimes it's better to do things in phases. So it's not being a technician who says, I got to get everything done and it's going to happen right away, and you just go in and try to Rambo it. That never works. And we had people do that, trust me, and I've walked them out the door. It's being more methodical. The technician that's going to last and have a career is going to think things through, and be risk averse. They're going to test things. They're going to be prepared for things. They're going to have people look at things for them. So just go into things and be methodical about it, and that way you've got things set up. Zach was prepared this morning. We kind of felt like there was going to be could be some issues. He had already had some cables pre-run. It was a situation we were kind of knowing we would need to work towards, but we had to do it sooner rather than later, and he was prepared. So even with that, there was still a window of time we had to work through some stuff. So, be prepared, be methodical, think through it, and plan ahead of time. I know I didn't answer your question, so I'm sure I got off on track. So what was it again? Sorry.
Just documentation. But
Yes.
I want to say something about what you said. So again, if you're in my class, any of my classes, I hope you're hearing some of what Brian is saying and being able to put it together. So notice you're almost always working as a team.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one thing. Like, it's not really a solo event. And then how many times, like a lot of our labs, like you get a peer, you work with someone, you check it, you have one of us check it. It's really important. Like, we do that for multiple reasons, and one of them is because we want you used to working with other people, having people check your work, you checking their work. Like, we're talking about millions of dollars worth of data if we were to, put it in dollars and cents, right? And so we're doing that not like as a punishment or, it's because it's real. It's part of what you're going to be doing in the field, is working together as a team, checking each other's work, keeping good documentation. So, yeah,
I'll
so.
even go further. If you don't
yeah.
do it, you won't be around.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So if you can't
And
work with people, you're not going to be around. So if Zach was flipping out this morning and he was going off the deep end, we would have walked him out the door eventually.
In Romania.
Yeah, Qatar, but it's not going to work. So it's even more so to what Andrew is saying. It's not an option of working with people. You need to. You have to. And it's the right thing to do. So you're not going to be in this industry long if you figure you're going to be like Rambo. You do everything yourself, and you know the answers, and you got all that figured out. You will be out of work in no time. So just think about that. Learn to communicate effectively. Learn to talk about things. Learn to have people look at it. It's not embarrassing. It's not, you don't know. It's really just working together. And that's what it is. It was like I said, one of the gentlemen this morning used to be a security guard a couple years ago, and he's advanced to a point now where he was an integral part of what was going on with technicians from all over the country that were way more seasoned than him, and he was confident in holding his own around what he saw. And that's a major part of that, and they valued what he saw, and he earned a credibility for what he was doing, and he said, hold on, I see something, and everybody stops. Like, you've got to be able to command respect, and if you think you're going to Rambo everything and you know it all, you're not going to get respect, and people aren't going to work with you, and you're going to find yourself out of work. So take the right approach by being a team player. Learn to communicate, learn to value documentation, learn to plan. It's not something, a good day for us is when nothing goes wrong, right? And everything works and no one does, nothing breaks. So you have to look at it like that. So it's just not optional. It really isn't. I'm sorry. Is that what you wanted me to say?
We lost all that.
Oh, did we? Oh, sorry.
no,
Oh, on the.
Glad you said all that. No, it's good.
was loud, though.
But to add on to the one thing about the documentation, so right now, in the job that I work, I'm the administrator for the wireless, and I'll use the term enterprise. That's basically the whole enterprise of routers and switches out there. But I work for on the Homeland Security with enterprise. So I'm deploying a wireless LAN controller that basically controls all the access points that are out throughout our network. And so right now, as Brian was saying, right now we have the production, means that's the operational device that's in production right now, not going down. Clients are on it and they're getting their service for wireless. On the back end, I've got another controller, a new version that I'm now bringing up online. So I've built out a plan, documentation, as Andrew is saying, where all the ports are. It's like, well, you should know. Like, yes, but if it's documented, now I know it. If I'm not there, someone can follow in my footsteps of where I was, what's going on, be able to go back and troubleshoot to do what needs to be done to bring that device fully online or repair it when it does get online. So documentation is a key. But to one point about teamwork, so today I was sitting there, I was doing a test. Had a technician out in the field. They were testing the wireless. I'm like, this is not working. I'm not seeing him connect to that access point that I want to see. So I go through my checklist. Let me make sure I got connection, make sure I got all the things, all that's going on. And so pretty much I got to the point this morning. It's okay, let's go back. I'll go back and look at my configurations and look at it. I was talking with a coworker today. So we were talking. He's like, hey, did you think about looking at the Radius server? That's basically where you get authentication. Did you put the access point? I was like, light bulb comes on. It's like, I didn't think about it. I knew when I was looking at it, it's like, this looks like an ACL, something's not happening, the individual's not getting on. But the point is, I've been working on this for days. I've worked in wireless for years, but this person came along and added something to the conversation that came on like, so again, as we're saying, you're not gonna solve all the problems. You're gonna solve some problems, but definitely share your work with your teammates so they may be able to see something that you may not see at the moment that moves that problem down the line to solving instead of like, I'm in my own world, I'm going to solve it, I know what to do. Excuse me. Access control list. But it mimicked something that made me think, he's like, oh, it connected, then it went off. I was like, did it get blocked? What happened? It went through the process. But then when I was talking to my coworker, he's like, yeah, what about the Radius server? It's got to authenticate for that device for you to get on to get access out to that. And immediately it turned the light bulb back on, like, oh, let's touch this to move it down the line again. So documentation team.
So some of our guys, two questions actually. Go ahead, ladies first.
I'm going to repeat the question after she says it, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so what a typical day would look
So,
like.
She was in your other class. You were in another class. I remember you. Okay. You
Yeah.
sat in the same seat too. That helped me because
Yes.
don't move around. It keeps me. You guys all stay here, stay in the same seats. So a typical day for me is for our team is really it's the day-to-day ticket-based systems. So managing tickets. So in other words, the technicians will come in and there'll be 50 boxes to unpack and rack and stack and cable and all these things. You'll have 5 tickets for troubleshooting. So you're going to have just a day-to-day litany of different things you have to do, ticketing system type activities, troubleshooting, new equipment, even delivery stuff we have to sign for. So everything that goes on with that equipment, from the loading dock all the way back to it being installed and turned up for the customer, is really that technician's, rack and stack technician's responsibility. Does that help? So again, to documentation is so important, and we just talked about it in there. You're documenting maybe not on a spreadsheet or something, it could be, but you're documenting for every customer inside their system, ticketing system. So they said, hey, what's going on with that port? I'm seeing it flap or something like that. And you'd go back and say, hey, it was flapping because of this. Here's the steps we took. This is what we did, and here's what we're seeing. Let us know if you have any more problems. People who can document are just the best. They're so valuable because people don't do it. Just doing the work is one thing. And people think, I fixed it. You didn't tell anybody. No one knows, and no one knows the next time. You didn't really solve the problem completely. So being good at documentation is important. Question? Yeah, is it? Okay, got it. You first and then him.
Would you say that you rely more on like information that you memorize, or more on like documents and tools that you can double check with?
Okay, so let me
Great
repeat it.
question.
So you're asking whether or not he relies more on memory, stuff that he's learned and memorized, or being able to pull from documentation, tools, etc.
Yeah. That's a really good one. because my memory fails me often. So I think you're going to have some muscle memory for things around certain topics and certain issues, but it's not uncommon for even the best technicians to go, let me go search Cisco, let me go search this, or what does that look like? Let me go get on different boards and see, because somebody may have seen that before. So I'm going to say it's a combination of things. There's going to be just knowledge and troubleshooting on how to think about things and going through your checklist and methodically talking things through. It's amazing when you hear really high-level engineers talk through it, and they barely speak the same language. We had a big cutover where we had people from different countries, and it was almost like a broken English around, but they were communicating it in a way that was amazing to hear them talk about certain things. So I would say it's a combination of things from me that I see from some of our higher-level engineers.
I agree. To me personally, I think it is muscle memory, like you said, and doing a memory, but you're going to have your tools. You're going to understand what those tools give you. Like if I'm going to look at, I've got this dashboard, it's telling me I can pull it down, I can look at all the ports on the back of this switch, and I see it may be red. I'm still going to have to SSH into that device, validate what I'm looking at, knowing that I'm looking at, the transport or in or to receive. When you look at the interface, do show interface, you can see what's transmit and what's receive. How many bits is it? Over 255, under 255, or something like that. So tools are great, but your knowledge and your understanding of what you're looking at is also important. So it kind of goes back and forth depending on what you have of accessibility where you're at. And even if you do have it, you also want to make sure, like, what I see on the window pane there or dashboard, is it what I know logically should be kind of what I'm looking at to validate it? And then that's where you got other experts also that's like, hey, yeah, that looks good, and we can proceed on down that. So personally, I think it's kind of, both.
I would say both too.
I was just wondering, at what level do you guys actually start to look for, academic-wise, look for a candidate? How much do we have to have completed to actually be looked at with interest? Because I have some, a ragtag, I've worked in wireless engineering and stuff, but academic-wise, I'm obviously not up. It's not the Cisco side and stuff like that. So I was just wondering where that cutoff is for
So-
an entry-level position.
Let me repeat that, and then let's segue into talking a little bit more about that hiring. Nikki, do you have if we keep people a little longer, it's okay? Okay. So we'll move into kind of the hiring piece of it, right? Because I think we'll talk a little bit about that. So the question is, what would you be looking for in a candidate? And really, I'm going to just pose it like this. What's the minimum qualifications that you're looking for? Not what the maximum is, right? Because sometimes, like you said, some people might just have a couple of classes. Maybe they don't have classes, but they have a little bit of help desk experience. And so let's segue into that and think of it in terms of entry level, right? Entry level. And then I'd like you to talk about the same thing, but as it relates to the understanding of network.
Okay.
Okay.
I can go first. So anyway, in the career that I'm in the network and security, what I've seen posting for jobs is basically having your CCNA, having that. And then when you come in, they're going to look at that. There have also been opportunities where you could still come in and say, we give you 6 months to get your CCNA after being hired, because they look at your background and you've got some experience of maybe, like you said, doing it with wireless or a hodgepodge of any of the experience that you've got background in networking, your Security Plus or Network Plus or different things like that. So if you get an interview, there's going to be a question, and they're going to probably ask you some questions that basically networking and subnetting and different things like that. That is where that assessment of pretty much that manager is kind of get an assessment of, if this person know the language of IT, do they understand kind of what we're looking for in an IT person, and they're going to ask you questions around that. So back to the point is, I think is not this highest level that you need to know a barrage of all type of applications, open source type of things. It's great. We have a lot of products out there, but I think in the academic world, having your CCNA, at least for where I work, that's kind of what they're looking for you to have.
Before you answer the question, let me add something. So a month ago in July, I met with Harry Coker, the National Cybersecurity Director for the nation, right? The National Cybersecurity Director. And they had a lot of really interesting things. But one thing I will tell you that they're working on is removing the requirement for bachelor's degrees for entry-level jobs, IT jobs specifically in the government. And the reason is because they know that a lot of people are going to school for career and technical education programs like A+, like CCNA, like Net Plus, like Security Plus, and that they are losing a lot of good talent. That hasn't happened yet, but again, nationally, and I don't know that Homeland Security would remove that, right? But nationally, the government does see a need to remove that requirement to help bring more people in, because there's going to be a lot of successful people in IT without needing a bachelor's degree. So I wanted to throw that out there because that's something that's very current, that's in the process of happening, and it's going to help people like you and that are going and getting your associate's degree. And not that you may not consider going on to get your bachelor's, but if you have gotten some education and you've developed some hands-on skills, you deserve a chance at a job. Okay, go ahead.
So for us in the data center world, it's really, we're not looking for the Cisco certifications. We're looking for more A+ and some Net Plus and some basic understanding of rack and stack technology. And just, like I mentioned, we brought somebody in who had attitude and aptitude, and he was a security guard. And that's maybe sounds like an extreme, but he just had the willingness, the desire to learn, and he just had the great attitude, and we brought him in, and he learned a lot. So we have programs that teach you all those things and help you get there. And if your goal is to be a network engineer, that's a different path, but we would start you off as rack and stack. You'd start working on the physical parts of the equipment, cabling, all those things, which is such a great foundation, because you're really going to be doing that layer 1 work, some of the layer 2 work you'll get involved with or see. So for us, it's really not needing a Cisco certification. It's A+ is great. Net Plus, some of those things, just having a good aptitude and understanding of IT in general would be helpful. But we're looking for people really with attitude and aptitude. I mean, we're just people who have come into our industry from different backgrounds. So not the same requirements. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering, because I do have experience with like building the actual servers and stuff. And,
You should apply. Apply.
Yeah.
Apply. Like right now. Yeah. Like right now.
But, like, would I still need, at least on paper, like an A+ certification or some sort of certification?
I don't think so.
Or as long as I have that work experience?
Yeah, I think showing that you're taking classes and you're working through it, you've got some work experience, you've got the attitude and aptitude to be able to do this work, you're working towards that, I would apply. You can definitely, you're ready now. You're ready now to apply. And I think it's showing that you want to work and you want to get in there. I think some of it is just the motivation, seeing people who are motivated and want to get into the industry, and I think that's the most important thing. So I would say you're ready. I would sharpen up your LinkedIn profile. I would make sure your resume is there. I'd talk about the classes that you're in, and I'd just start to network with people. And that way you can start to hear from people like me who say, okay, let's get this guy in, or figure out where he can fit in, what kind of slot he wants, and get started. And I think one of the things that I like is when we have like the network, we call them DCO technicians, right? Data center operations technicians. You're going to work on that equipment. That's a great way of you starting to learn and get involved in the industry. And then from there, you're going to start working with all the network engineers. You'll start to just learn by osmosis. You'll be amazed at what you start learning from those guys. Like Zach was on with the highest level engineer in the company, and he's learning and he's growing with that. And again, he was a security guard. So this tells you he didn't have any of that. So we helped him with a lot of that. So Bixby and some of those other things, we got him as well. So I think you're ready.
And keep in mind, like, with every time you add on another certificate, that opens up another door for you, right? So even if you come in at an entry-level job, because that's what a lot of people are going to end up doing, they're going to come in at an entry-level job, depending upon what your other experience is, okay? So we might talk about that too. And if you have your CCNA, if you have your Net Plus, that's going to allow you to move quicker, move faster, go to different areas, learn something new that you might not be able to learn if you don't have your A+, if you don't have your CCNA. So, you want to be flexible in the workforce. You want to be nimble in the workforce. And those certificates is what allow you to do that.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, they really help. I mean, the certificates, I think people look at it like it's just, well, they don't really pay attention to it. We do. We really do, because it checks the box, right? You're going to have 200 people apply. If you basically sort it by who has certificates, you're down to 25. You just made the recruiter's job a lot easier. So it's just another thing. I took my CCNA back in a long time ago. It was 2001, so right before September 11th. And I didn't pass it the first time, and I went home, studied, and took it 2 days later and passed it. And it's a great thing. And at some point, I got to a point where I was going into either management or continuing to be a tech. I went into management. That's how I became vice president. So it helps you with your career path. Like, I don't look at that and go, wow, that was something I had to get. It was just something that really helped me along that way. I had a college degree, but it was in economics, and I was doing something in technology. So it's just sometimes life takes you in different directions, and you just have to get those certifications that help you with that. So never is going to hurt.
Ken has a question.
62% of all four-year college graduates work in a job that does not require a degree. Let's put that in perspective.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what they're saying here is very more likely to be on that utility side stuff. They
Yeah.
Yeah. Ken is over at Mesa.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah,
I'll let you
Ken, introduce yourself.
Yeah.
I didn't do that to try to get it
No,
done.
no, but
It's an interesting statistic
I want you
saw.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's,
It's, that it-
well, again, if you, I say this statistic all the time too, I think it's 87 or 82% of all cybersecurity professionals start out in networking. Cybersecurity doesn't exist without a network. It doesn't exist without a network. Go ahead.
Hi.
Just introduce yourself, Ken.
I'm Ken Hackler. I'm at Mesa Community College. I'm the program director for what we call automated industrial technology. I also support Australia, which our program we have there is out at the Buckeye Westmet campus. So we train people to be technicians that work on automated industrial equipment. And working with Brian, we developed a certification this last year, and it's called data center operation, but it's really on the facility side. So it's supporting those other things he was talking about, power coming into the plant, the controllers that run the HVAC systems or run the fire alarm systems and all that type. So there's a lot of other type of roles on that side too. And so we took and leveraged 6 of our existing classes and added 2 new classes. One is just an introduction to data centers, which is really critical operations. So a power plant, a hospital, a data center, they're all considered critical operations, and they get certain things that do: security, water systems, fire alarms, backup generators, UPS systems, which are big battery packs, so when you lose the power, servers don't shut down, hospitals don't shut down, people die and stuff like that. So we added that class, and we also added something that's called power distribution. It's about how the power comes in to keep everything up. And if that power shuts down, how do we turn on the big generators out there and power everything up and use those batteries to keep everything running? So, but yeah, it's a technician program and very high paying jobs. And even though you can get an associate, we have tons of companies hiring our people with just our 2 certifications, our base certification. Now we have this new certifications, about 30 something credits or something like that.
So with the data centers, there's kind of like 2 tracks. There's the IT track, and then there's the distribution automation track.
Yep.
So just kind of depending upon, and I know of people that move between them. They start out in IT, and then they move over to the distribution automation side, and then vice versa. Like, some people might start out by managing HVACs, and then they like get a little taste of
I did
IT
that.
and move
Yeah.
over to IT. So there's a lot of movement available. Go ahead.
I started off in the Cisco side, as we talked about, so I came in on the networking, switching, routing, IT side, and then after a while, we started building these data centers out in the early 2000s, and so I started to understand, like, what is this whole raised floor and electrical, mechanical stuff, and all these things happening, so I wanted to get involved in that, so went over and started working on the operations side, which was really good, so I got a chance to learn that, and now I work on the connectivity side, so I kind of came back over to the IT side. So you can move your career around. Things happen and companies change and different opportunities present themselves. So don't ever feel like you have to stay and do something forever. I tell my kids, life is broken into chapters, and I won't get into the whole story here, but what does this next chapter look like for you? You never know. You may go into project manager and IT management and stuff like that. There's different ways of getting involved in IT, but I think what we're saying here tonight is having a good basis of switching and routing is a great foundation for so many things. Cybersecurity, I know, is the hot topic. I have a strong opinion about that in some ways, but I won't share it here, but there's just things you can take with the whole switching and routing is a great foundation for a lot of different things you want to do, and that's how I started.
No, and it's a great foundation, and in the course I teach, the CNT 205, I talked a little bit about cybersecurity, but one thing I was trying to get them to understand is it sits on a network, just like Andrea says. When we talk about, tactics and techniques that the adversary is going to use, once they get in, they're not worried about what type of device it is. They want to escalate, moving, laterally. Can I get to this switch? Once I get to this switch, can I now get into this server? Once I get into the server, am I able to break and get to the different things that are going to be in the database and access? So we're back down to that basics of passwords and protecting and that kind of stuff. So we get that kind of, again, I'm not foot stomping against cybersecurity, but don't think cybersecurity is this path completely off of networking, because as I said earlier, I get guys that are calling from the SOC. It's like, hey, can you go look at this IP over here? Because, they're like, we don't understand that network stuff, but we need you guys to kind of tell us that. And that's kind of our wheelhouse. We don't kind of say, okay, well, you guys don't know anything, but there's expertise in both sides, but it all comes down to this one point that you can come to networking. Now, I may have been in a network and I'm like, hey, I want to go over and work in the the Security Operations Center. And now that I've done that, kind of got my path understanding there, maybe I want to now move over to in the data center where I now am dealing with, not spanning tree, but VXLANs and different things and spine and leaf. So that path is, like you said, it's not a broken chapter where you're stuck and I'm here forever. It has many paths, because how many of you, delve into IT and somebody's like, oh, so you're an IT person, can you build a website? Can you build a computer? Can you do servers? Can you come over here and build a data center? Like, I know that, but I'm not a specialist in all of that.
Fix my computer.
Can you fix my computer all the time?
My family still asks me, can you fix this? And no, way too old for all that. Yeah, so there's just different paths. I mean, I think a couple weeks ago we actually had somebody here from Jasmine from Microsoft. She's outstanding and so dynamic. She was the one talking about being a data center project manager. So you don't have to. There's just so many different ways to leverage your skills and do different things. I've worked in sales. I've worked in technology. I've done so many different parts of the business, and it's just because you have good foundational skills, because you're willing to learn, and because you're willing to communicate, you can do a variety of different things. So be well-rounded. Don't limit yourself. Try to learn as much as you can, but the basis of a lot of what we're talking about is switching and routing, so it's great. I have a strong opinion on cybersecurity. I won't share it all, but just be mindful. I'll just say this. Just be mindful that sometimes cybersecurity, at least in my industry, sits outside of IT. I think people think cybersecurity is like you're going to be in there, and again, the dark
shaker.
room. You're in a dark room with 9 screens and a hood on, and you're doing all. They sit on more meetings than any of us, and they're not included in IT. They're very separate. They're a business function, and just understand what you're getting into when you do that. I hear a lot of people say cyber this, cyber that. You don't even come to our conversations on IT, so it's very much separate. So those are what we call like this. It's a business function, and it's very different. So just understand that, and if that's what you want to do, that's great. But don't think you're going to be merging with IT and you're doing all these things. It's just not like that. It's very much separate, at least in my world. I don't know if it's different for you.
No, it does, and like I said, we don't have I think the closest that I come to is the security operation team that we deal with. But again, in the course that I teach, I try to say that adversary's got to leverage the network to get to where you are, what you're protecting. They want to know what a MAC address. They go and learn this. You're like, oh, they just noticed us through osmosis. No, they have to learn what switches and ports and transport and receive and all these technologies that we're talking about, applications, DevOps. They are immersing themselves in what we've been talking about, foundational IT applications and different things. So it's no mystery of a shift out here and it's a different world. It's based on IT, because once they get into a switch, and if they didn't know what they were doing, it's like they're lost. So they have to understand the basis of what we're talking about. So yeah, they don't sit on very many of the calls that we're on. I mean, if it's that level, if you've heard of the breaches that have happened in the network of, and SolarWinds and how the government was impacted, there was nobody on a call when that actually was a breach. IT was on trying to figure out how do we stop, how do we shut it down, how do we figure out what routers are impacted, what things need to be done. There was not a cybersecurity person on that call, and no disrespect to what they were talking about, but we were doing the groundwork of figuring out what needed to be secured and what had happened. So we were going through the layers 1, 2, and 3. Again, it's not shunning that you can't go there, but again, in the perspective, kind of know how these two parties work together, and that's the path you want to go. I just, like I say, Footstomp definitely have a good foundation in that, the IT world.
So say like IT is all about like finding the issue and stopping it, and cybersecurity is about like securing the issue and stuff like that.
No.
Security is about both of those things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
both of those entail
So-
security.
IT, we run part of the business. We run operations, we run systems, we run all the technologies. We do all the things that make the systems and the tools and the customers and all the things we do internally go. That's IT. So the cyber team, at least in our company, in our industry, really sits as a business function, just like sales or marketing or something. They sit as a business function to make sure they do penetration testing, make sure we got switches that are not behind on firmware, make sure that we're thinking about some of the vulnerabilities that they've identified in their penetration testing. So there's just things that they do to make sure that we're thinking about IT the right way. So for example, when we have to sometimes buy a new device or buy a new tool or software, sometimes security has to bless it. So we may say, hey, this business function needs this, and we have to do this. Here's what we're looking at getting. It's a third party. We have to do this, and it has to get blessed by that group. So there are business function that sits separately from IT, and it's good that they do because they actually are kind of monitoring and managing the vulnerability, and security pieces. We're managing, and we have our own security, but we're doing and running all the business processes and function for our sides for the business itself. So hopefully that helps you understand what that works. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
It's great, like you're saying, and in Cisco, we have where you get a brand new, the device I was talking about, the wireless LAN controller. When that device, before it's connected to our network, we use the term of hardening, make sure it's got all the updated software on it, the operating system, make sure we patch it, make sure we're securing that device. So we are kind of setting the stage so we are secured and on the IT network. From cybersecurity, kind of the analogy that we're saying is like they're there kind of looking at things like what would an adversary do to try to come into that device? What are some of the things and the tactics and techniques that we know that are out there in the market that have done in the big business world as far as attacking in the government or, SolarWinds attack or Target? When you read a breach, you get the flash of what happened and how it brought down something and what's going on. In the background, you've got here's the information. Here's the IT person saying, okay, this is what we've got to do. We've got to move this circuit over here. We've got to start doing this. So if this is something that, ransomware, they've taken hold of this switch or whatever else, we've got to pivot and move. We don't have time to sit there and kind of figure out the what, when, where, and why. We will do our root cause analysis as we come back to that. But the kind of the cyber people out there is, okay, we're now stopping them from going further. We are maintaining the operation. You hear that word a lot, operations. And operations kind of where we work, that's where things are in production. That basically means it's online, it's live. We've got clients on it. We got to make sure that they can go and continue to do their job because you shut down a business, Amazon or something like that, you're talking about millions of dollars a second. You talk about an operation as far, in a second, it's like, how does that quote? Because they can't connect or do what they're doing, in the world of the market, you're making money. In the world of, government, is AKA the mission. What can we not do? Or Department of Homeland Security maintain the security of the network and of the U.S. and different things. The Department of Defense, whatever they do, that stuff sits on the network. So cybersecurity does have its role. We do communicate, but in the day-to-day, just from my experience, like I said, you're going to learn that a lot in your network operations and the operations ops of the day.
Does that answer your question? I think it just helps to put cyber in the right framework. I hear a lot of people I hear it all the time. Cyber is the new sexy thing, and it's just, I think people just need to understand what it means. And without having the basis, I don't know how you would be as effective in cyber if you don't really have a good foundation.
Yeah, if you don't know the network. Anything else before we wrap up? Yes. Lou.
I'm asking from like a student, what can I do for like experience? Like, is there like a part-time job I should be looking for or internship?
Your hands-on CNT 150 and 160 class, sir.
Yeah, internships are great. Anything you can do to get hands-on experience. I mean, if you can find projects even here, if there's something you can do. I remember there was some folks I brought in just to help me clean up some rack and stack stuff, which was just hands-on. Just anything you can do to just get hands-on experience and just to gain knowledge will help. And again, but I'll say a lot of times we understand, you're 20-something years old, you don't have a lot of experience. We can't expect you to have too much experience, right? You're coming out of school, you just haven't had a chance yet. So some of it is going to be leaning on attitude and aptitude, right? It's basically saying, hey, I'm coming as I am. No one's going to let you go work on their network tomorrow. So you got to be able to kind of show that you've got the right abilities and the right skill sets and, can can be the one that can grow into the position, but it's gonna be you leaning in and someone taking a chance on you. But the more internships you can get, the more knowledge you can gain is the better.
And with that said, there aren't a lot of internships. We always
Yeah,
have this conversation. I know that every student thinks that they want an internship, and that would be great. But I just want to tell you right now, there's probably not an internship for you. It's kind of like football, right? Like you want to be the quarterback, but 1 out of 1,000 end up being. I mean, it's the truth. It's the truth. Okay.
great point.
So we're working on developing more internships. There's such a need for IT people. And internships take management on both sides, like the education side as well as the industry side. And so they're not that easy to foster. So there's one thing. And a lot of times IT companies, they just want to hire you. They just want to get you in. They're not really, they don't need to deal with me to develop an internship to help you when they need the help, and they're just going to hire you. Now, and they'll put you on a 90-day, right? In my opinion, and what I'm seeing is contract companies filling the void of internships. So a better plan or an additional plan, go look for internships, but how many, do you use contractors?
Yeah, we do.
So, okay, what's really common in the IT field is contract companies. And so there are middlemen that will hire you, okay, as an entry-level person. They may provide some training. Often they provide benefits. I'm thinking of Tech Systems, very, very good, hire a lot of students. And you will work for this contract company. QTS will hire through the contract company. They'll work you for 90, whatever, a 90-day contract, a 6-month contract. Do you know what your contracts are?
Yeah, it'd be somewhere like that.
Okay, so that would be a normal contract. At the end of 6 months, someone at QTS would say, hey, Lou was great, we're gonna hire Lou. Or Lou wasn't great, we're sending Lou back. And then Tech Systems, Tech Systems might, try to hire you out someplace else in a different type of job, or maybe the same type of job, right? So what I think is, again, look for internships, but also think about contract companies. And with contract companies, you are going to get such a wide variety of experience because you may be on a different job every day. Now, it can be stressful, right? It can be stressful, but you will learn very fast and it will make you incredibly marketable. And at the end of the year, you may decide to stay on with that contract company, or you may have a different job, right? You may have somebody that's picked you up. So I do think that is another way to do it. And I really want you all to leverage your hands-on classes. Don't dismiss the fact that you're in an A+ class where you're actually getting to tear down the computer. You're actually learning how to load operating systems. You're on the hands-on Cisco. So part of it is learning how to leverage your resume and your LinkedIn profile to put that in there. Like, yeah, I don't have the work experience, but I just finished the Cisco hands-on program, a hands-on program. So that's the types of things that you can leverage in the absence of an internship. So,
Yeah.
and attitude is everything. I'm just gonna say one more thing because I'm talking a lot tonight. Okay, I was on a meeting today or yesterday, I don't remember what day, I think it was yesterday, with 30 professionals in all different IT industries, data science, large language models, lots of data centers. We had a representative from Homeland Security, so just a variety of things. And I didn't capture the entire list, but they put out a list of things that they're looking for in employees and rated them as 1, 2, 3, 4. And I know it's hard to see, but 13 people, right? Or 13 said that number 4 was the most important: integrity, accountable, ethical. And then the other high one that I want to point out is dependability. Consistent, timely, prepared, right? And then look at lifelong learner. So these are some of the things that ended up in the highest rated stuff. Not very many technical skills up there.
We can teach you that.
Employers can teach you that, especially if you already have the foundational knowledge and the vocabulary. You can learn that stuff. So if you go in with your attitude and aptitude. So.
Yeah, so I would say too, just to add on to that, on your resume, don't discount the EQ, communication skills, documentation is important. Be able to talk about those things and be able to say, hey, I didn't have a ton of experience working on the hardware or anything yet, but I'm a quick learner. I'm great at documentation. I'm really good at following up. Just here's what my documentation looks like, or here's some of the things I've done. Add everything you can around the personality you have and around the skills you do have, so you can just start to show that someone you want someone to take a chance on you, right? You're young and you don't have experience. We know that, but you want to stand out from the crowd and be able to say, he's somebody who's organized enough. He's going to listen. He's going to be a good team player. All those things make a difference. I mean, we could teach you a lot of this stuff. Like, it really is more. I think people assume the best Cisco guys are the ones that get the job, and it's like, no, the best people who interview best and can work and follow directions and be good team players. And I think that's the most important part we're looking for, attitude and aptitude. So just showing that in an interview, being positive in your interview, being good on your LinkedIn, like all those things present you and just packaging you up the right way. Yeah. I think you had a question.
Honestly,
We'll do
my
much of
question
you.
perfectly right there, so I
Oh,
don't
did I?
Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right, good deal.
Demir?
You and you.
So my question is, what's more valuable in terms of loyalty and commitment versus someone that hops from job to job?
Okay, so the question was do you value loyalty and commitment, or someone that that is hopping from job to job?
I think you know where that ends.
Yeah.
You want to see somebody who job hops, right? Loyalty is great. I think and I would just say be as loyal to a company as they are to you. Like, I'm not suggesting you say 30 years, by no means. And at you guys' age, definitely don't do that, right? I would just say, make sure that you're jumping around. I think there's a little bit of a recognition that you guys are starting off. Like, you don't get the first job like Naeem working at Microsoft at 22. That doesn't happen, right? So it's one of those things where you do move around, right? It's not something the beginning of before younger than 25, we look at it, you're going to have different things you're trying. You're figuring things out. You're just getting out of school. So there's a little bit of leniency around that. Now, if you're in your 30s, late 20s and 30s, and you seem to be bouncing every 6 months, that's not a good look either. So I just would say, hopefully that answers your question, but it's just being loyal is good, but finding a place that you can call home where you can learn and earn, right? You guys should be looking at learning and earning over these years.
So my question is, do employers use Indeed for what's some good places to break into tech jobs?
LinkedIn. So a lot of us use LinkedIn mostly. Most professionals, organizations use LinkedIn. I think is the top one. Indeed is another one I use. But the recruiters go out and search all kind of places. You believe it or not, we're having a hard time finding people.
Which is why they're here.
Yeah, we've had a hard time finding people for really good paying jobs. Very good paying jobs, and it's been really hard for certain positions, not necessarily just the networking ones, but LinkedIn is one that I would say is that's where I go. Like, if you send me, like, all of you guys should be connected with me by the night's end. And every time I leave this class, I get like 50 people look at my profile, but you should, right? Because I'm hiring and you want a job. So you should be connecting with both of us before the night's over. And it's just a good way of networking. A lot of times jobs don't come by what you know, it's who you know. So you'd be surprised at how much that works, and it's who you know. So I remember you, and I remember you. And when it comes, I was actually thinking about you the other day because I asked you, this company asked me and said, hey, I need 5 people. And I reached out to you. And
I
said,
think we were talking about Karina.
Oh, sorry, it wasn't you.
No, but
Sorry.
Hannah's been
Yeah.
here before
Yeah,
too.
so I remember seeing
You
her.
and I
Yeah.
have talked about
We
Hannah.
talked about that, but
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes things just pop up, and it's, hey, I need 5 people, and that's what they said to me. So I said, okay, I'll send you some resumes from folks that have reached out to me after this class and after we've done this. So I don't know if you want to.
No, just kind of adding back onto that, the job hopping thing. I think what came to mind when he said this, like, if you are transitioning and if you're asked on the spot, what would you say? Like, why did you move? Well, you'd be able to answer that question, what came to my mind. It should be a reason if, I know a friend that kind of hopped job and he was having issues, and employers may in the back of their mind may think that, but if you can answer, hey, I transitioned, this was a 6-month job, or I transitioned and I wanted to see what you have in this, be able to professionally to speak to that, and basically what Andrew was talking about, basically with documentation, credibility, and integrity. We're talking about a network. That is huge right now when we're talking about, are you somebody that they can credential to be on a network, even if it's just racking and stacking equipment, even if it's just kind of getting on a network and doing something as simple as, layer 1 and 2. We live in a very high commodity, very precious commodity now, which is data. And managing that data is huge. And so the technologies and the business that we are in, brings that where employers are looking for that integrity and that commitment and that documentation. And you, like he said, we can train the other parts that you don't have experience in, but are you that platform where we can build on with the professionalism and the different skills that you have to take you to that level to be an engineer, data center, cybersecurity, wherever you want to go. The sky's the limit, but the foundation is you and those basic characteristics that you have, bring into the table for that employer to work with.
Brian has people putting in for the jobs. They're not getting the jobs. And it isn't because of a lack necessarily of technical skill. It's because they show up on a Zoom meeting and their camera is looking that way. They show up on the meeting and they're like, oh, you know, have you ever done that? Sure. Yeah. Hey, don't know what a data center is. Never heard of QTS. Right? So it's not that there aren't people that are putting in, it's that they're not quality candidates. So frankly, that's good news for us. It means it's easy to look good, right? Go in there with some vocabulary, confident, you know, looking at the person that you're interviewing with. Have your camera ready, have your LinkedIn profile ready. Like, we can get these jobs, right? We can get these jobs because you are not only developing some technical skills, but we're really trying to practice in the classroom what you would be doing in the real world. So you all can get these jobs, right? Because the candidates that are coming to them are not strong, and it isn't because of technical skills. It's because of EQ, right? The emotional qualities that they have, the emotion, their soft skills, and things like that.
Not like direct contact, but to contact you would be LinkedIn.
Yeah, directly contact him on LinkedIn. Yeah,
I just didn't
Yeah.
want to bother you or anything.
no, it doesn't bother him. I'm talking for you now, Brian. It doesn't bother him. They need people.
Yeah, so that's why we're here. So
They
it
need
doesn't-
people.
I think that's where, and then I'm just gonna build on what you're saying. I think there's this perception that people look at and think, well, I don't really wanna bother somebody, or I don't really know him or anything like that, or well, that's not really gonna help me, or I'm not ready for that. And I would tell you, just get ready and send it over. You'll be surprised. I respond back probably more than what people think. And I remember people, and sometimes things come up, and I may say, you know, there was a student in that class, and that happened. I remember I asked you the guy who
Yeah.
was sitting right here. It's like, who was he? I remember him. And so that's how connections are made, and that's how things work. So sometimes you'd be surprised, but it's just send your resume over, reach out on LinkedIn, make sure your profile is there, make sure it's ready, get your resume ready, and then, you know, send it over to me. And you never know what's going to happen. You know, I was in the hallway at Digital, and they were at another company, and they were like, "Oh, if you have people, send them over." And
Yeah.
that's all it takes. Sometimes it's just
Looking
you know,
for
surprise
5
stuff.
people.
Yeah, looking for 5 people. So, and we didn't fill them yet. So.
Hmm?
Didn't fill them yet. so yeah, it's connections, right? It's really about who you know. Like think about it, recruiters, they get 250, 500 resumes for stuff. They're just looking 3 seconds or so of your resume, scanning through it. So you got to stand out. So if a resume, you know somebody at the company, you know somebody's looking, like you got to pull on all those connections to get an interview, to get in there. Once you get the interview, that's what we talk about. People sometimes aren't prepared or ready for it. That's a whole nother conversation of making sure you're ready, making sure you're prepared, and you're organized, and you're focused. And I think that's a different part. But sometimes it's just getting through that number of people to get to that recruiter to see what you got.
Yeah.
And it helps if you know somebody. So trust me sending your resume means more than you sending your resume, right, to my company. So it's just making relationships. So I'll remember you because you're asking great questions, and you're going to reach out to me tonight. So I'll remember you, right? So, what's your name?
Sure. Austin?
Austin. Okay, nice to meet you, Austin.
All right, Lucinda?
You can't find me. Gregory Davis, D. Davis? Gregory, yeah. Gregory.
You have me, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you see my posts? Yeah, yeah. That's another thing too, Austin. I post for jobs, right? Jobs will come up, and I'm sending posts. So when you connect with me, you'll see all those jobs. So people sometimes will see the job and go, "Hey, is this something I'm qualified for?" I'm like, "No, I don't think that one is." The next time they'll reach out, I'll go, "Yeah, you're qualified for that. Apply for it." So you got a connection, and I'll send it directly over to the recruiter. So you just cut the line. If you think about it, because of who you know, and it's just how the world works. So knowing people helps, right? So yes.
If our only experience would be like these classes and then this degree, at what point would you say it would be something you're looking for some of these jobs that you're talking
I think
Now.
yeah, now.
I can answer that for you.
Now. We're not looking for bachelor's degrees. I think there's this perception that we need people with 4-year degrees, and we don't. We're not looking for that. What we found is that people with 4-year degrees have more options to do other things, and some of the places they want to work are more Amazons and Googles and stuff. And that, we're a data center company, maybe not as popular, but we're looking for technician levels to come in on a great salary and do rack and stack basic, beginning network type stuff and be really good at systems and understand how technology works and really spend years working with us and then growing into the business. So you're at the right place. Like all you guys are at the right place now. And you may not feel like it. You may feel like, well, I don't know this. But if you wait till you know everything, you're going to be waiting. You'll never get a job. You're never going to be ready. So just, I would say apply and try and learn. You'll never be surprised at what you get unless you try. So I think you're ready now. What's your name?
Nicholas?
Okay, Nicholas, I'll see your connection tonight. Okay, good. It's your career. It's your life and your career. So if you don't take it serious, like I think people sometimes say, well, I'm not ready or it's not my time, then life will pass you by. Trust me, you'll be 50 years old and you'll never have or get where you want to be. We're trying to hire. I wouldn't be here if we weren't hiring. So keep that in mind, yes.
I'll still ask it. I recently got offered internship at Microsoft. And I
You
feel
were?
like- Yes.
Good for you.
I feel like does the criteria change once you actually are in the internship? Like you can show attitude and attitude all you want, but what else are you looking for, especially from your perspective as a hiring manager?
Oh, good question. First, congratulations on getting in Microsoft.
Thank you.
That's
You're gonna
awesome.
love
Good for
it.
you. You're going to love it. That's a great stepping stone at this. How old are you?
22.
Okay, awesome. Good for you. So yeah, I mean, you're going to go in. Obviously, attitude and aptitude helped you get there, and they're wanting to take it. Did you go through the academy?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, good. So he went through the same program. That's a great program. If you guys don't know about it, the Microsoft Data Center Academy is a great program. So
They
good for you.
don't have any openings right now.
Yeah.
They're looking at reopening it, but they're changing it.
Yeah.
They're restructuring it, so we don't know where we're gonna land.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's great. So yeah, when you get in, it is about attitude and aptitude still, but you're going to start bolting on skills. Learn, listen, be coachable, teachable, work with people. It's going to be a lot around your EQ, right? They'll teach you things. So be teachable, but recognize that it's about your attitude and how you work with people. So just go in like a sponge and learn. We know you don't know it. They know you don't know it. So don't feel, this is a great thing for you. So you don't have to go in with this kind of feeling, I got to show. You don't have to show anything. Just show up, right? You've gotten that far, which is amazing. So good for you. Go in with the right attitude, just be teachable and learn. Naeem, you have to,
I've been texting him about it. He's
oh man, Naeem is awesome. He was at my house last night for dinner.
said he couldn't be here.
Yeah, he couldn't be here. Yeah, he was going to be on the panel. So, but we got a great fill-in for him. So yeah, great fill-in. So
No,
good.
no problem.
Congratulations.
No problem.
Hopefully that helps you. Yeah, good for you. Yeah.
But no, just to add on to that, what he was talking about, like getting in, and definitely in the organization I work in, and like I come in, we got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3s. You look at it, it's like, oh, I got to come in, I got to be at that tier 3. That is where the expertise, where those have progressed on to learn. How fast you're going to move to, that's dependent on many, many things. So when you're coming into a job as an offer, what Brian says, you come in and you be a sponge and you learn. That's what we're looking for. Like, hey, that person's good at VoIP over there. That person's good at wireless. But my lane right now is this. But, hey, I'm going to talk to that person. And like, how do you do what you do? How do you know what you know?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
I mean,
learn
and
from,
those things.
yeah.
And again, like I always tell people, we're not going to turn the network keys over to you in day one. You're not going to be like, hey, go fix that router because, it's got to be up in 5 minutes and, it's costing money. No, you're going to learn. They're going to be guiding you through things. That's going to be QCing of the work that you do. There's protocols and different things there. So, as you dive into these IT worlds and get to the jobs, again, if you keep hearing her say, it's like, you're not there to know everything. You're not to be able to take it from the router all the way to the data center and know all the things in there. Great. There's a lot of technology out there. Back in my day, we read books. Now there's all over ChatGPT. There's things on the internet,
lot
Google, or
easier,
whatever
isn't
the
it?
thing. You can get that information, but I don't want to take away from not getting access to the information. Does not take away your need to be able to understand what that information is. You still have to be able to connect the dots, what's going on, to be able to look at that dashboard and say, that's not right. I need hands-on down there to pick up that switch or that port to look at it. So, go in, keep learning.
Yeah,
It never
just learn
stops.
everything. Yeah, that's a great opportunity. That's an amazing opportunity. Yeah. Just go in and just learn as much as possible. Any other questions?
Wrap it up. Any last questions? Yeah, we went long tonight, but I thought the conversation was really good.
Yeah. Go
Yes.
for it.
Oh,
Yeah. So the question was, do we have a preference when you're applying? Do we go directly to the company or to a recruiter? So yeah, either way, however we get you, I think it would probably be better if you go directly to, as opposed to a headhunter or somewhere, just go directly to our HR department is the best way, I think. It's the shortcut to get to where you want to get to. Your goal is to get to that hiring manager. Like that is the goal. How do you get to the hiring manager? You got to go through the gatekeeper, which is typically the recruiting person. They're going to screen you out, and you got to do well on that first screen and make sure you're there. Bring your energy, bring your organizational skills. And I think one of the things I would say too is what I see most is people just underestimating or not taking it as serious as they should. I mean, I've seen people with just all the things Andrea mentioned, not really being ready, prepared, focused, didn't shave, didn't look like they got their windows closed, it's bright, you're blinding people, just not really taking the moment serious. It's your life and your career, and if you want to do something that's going to level you up to a different place, then act like it and show up. And I think that's one of the things I would tell people. So, you know, be clear about what you want to get to. If you want the job, go get it and have the energy. You have to remember, and I'll I hope maybe we'll end on this, but when you think about it, the recruiter who's talking to you has a whole list of people and a whole list of jobs she's trying to fill. Solve her problem and be that one. I can't tell you how happy they are. I have a recruiter that works for me, and she gets so excited when we find the right person because it's hard to find the right person. So be that right person, solve the problem, and answer her questions and solve her problems. And that's a great thing. So she can check that off and go, we think we found them. They get so excited, but you be that person. And I think that's what I would tell people, like, bring the energy. Like, I feel like there's too much of a, well, I don't know this yet. And we know you don't know it. So get past that and bring the energy and be excited about it. Yes, I'm here, but I am going to be the most dynamic. I'm a quick learner. I'm able to communicate really well. I love being around people. I'm a great team player. Say those words. Tell us. She wants to hear that from you, or they want to hear it from you. And I just don't hear that enough. It's mumbling. It's not answering questions completely. It's not looking in the camera. It's all over the place. Go get the job. That was a pep talk. Go get it tomorrow. All right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So good.
Good.
Nicely done, Greg. Nicely done. Thank you for saving the day.
No, I enjoyed it.
All right, let's all take a break.
So for my class, if you can help bring the chairs back to our classroom, they're right here in the middle and on that side.
Great. It was really good. I'm gonna reach out.
Yeah, we talked about that. I got another woman I just got on my other panels. Jasmine, she is. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'll go ahead and
Have you
apply.
been to your other ones, or is this the first one?
The first one, I wasn't here for CNT 140 when they came.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
because Aryan came. So Fadi is friends with Aryan. I don't know if you remember him from, he had come to a couple of them. Had the accent, the European accent,
He
yeah.
comes to all my events. When we did the speakers
Yeah.
in Australia.
Yes, he did, yeah.
I'll look for the connection. You want to connect with me on LinkedIn?
Yes, sir. So for you, I recently applied to a new job, TSMC.
Yeah, semiconductor.
Yeah. So I have some references over there, some colleagues. I was trying to see how that's going to go, and then from there I'm gonna work my way to you guys. So I'll be in contact with you for sure.
Very good. Well, very nice.
TSMC doesn't have as many IT jobs, I think.
Yeah.
But they have,
I
they're
was going
most,
to enter as a basic engineer. They send you to Taiwan
this
for
was different.
3 to 6 months, train you on everything, and then you come here and work.
that sounds great. I'm gonna apply at TSMC.
Yeah.
Good for you. Well, very nice meeting you. Best of luck. Very welcome. Very nice meeting you. How are you?
Riley, Brian Riley.
I wanted to get your full name so I could connect with
Sure,
you.
Brian Darby. Yeah,
Darby, D-A-R-B-Y.
D-A-R-B-Y.
Put it on the board.
Because, I took notes last time when you
I
guys
thought I
came to
remember
speak.
you. Yeah, I thought I remember you.
And I was in 140 at the time, we just moved, we're in 150 now, but, I had you all in my notes, and I got wiped in my iCloud, so. Yeah, I like that, I keep everything a little meticulous in my notes, but, because we have the career workshop coming up.
Yeah, the LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I don't have a LinkedIn set up yet, but we're going to be setting one up, so I've been kind of collecting connections to follow once I get that set up.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, once you get all that together.
So LinkedIn, it would be a good idea to just start your initial profile, even if you put nothing on it, so that when it's that day, you've already got it built, you've already got an account, and then we'll build it out.
So we're doing a workshop on the 27th.
Yeah, that's exactly
what
what I
he's
was
talking
talking
about.
about.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
But yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about that I'm gonna be coming to. So you're gonna be at that too?
Yeah, she just dragged
exactly. This was like, yeah, I'm bringing her and my wife. So
I might be bringing my wife too.
there you go, bring your wife. Wife, baby.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Very welcome.
Yeah, thank you for coming to speak.
How you doing?
Anna.
See you again.
You were in another class, right? I remember your smile. Yeah, so tell me where you're at.
You guys talking about
Give me your LinkedIn.
I know. I'm kind of tied to my job right now.
Which job is that?
all three of them said.
Oh, good for you. So now you're working
All right,
for IT project
can you
manager?
lock in for this? Okay,
I
so
actually came
I'll
up
be
here to
here
ask
next
you
week.
because I have heard about an IT project manager.
Oh, it's one of Oh.
If that talk was
If the talk for project management.
oh, we should have that as a topic.
Yeah.
But I think it needs to be.
Oh, it's we can do a whole day on project management. IT is so important. The Scrum and all the different things that go along with that. It's good. Yeah. So get your LinkedIn profile and I'll connect you with a bunch of IT project managers. I got a couple that work for me that are awesome. Awesome stuff.
I love the details that we can plan. I feel like I would learn really well from there.
Listen, there's a ton of jobs with that. So what are you going to school for? Like ground school for Cisco or?
Associates in cybersecurity, but I'm on the Cisco specialization.
Okay. You want to go on the side or you want to project management?
Josh or Jeff Necker?
Because I do want to job here, but I do.
My supervisor, Mike Green.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So without a case, you're
Yes, we should. It's a smaller subcontractor.
And who is it, Mike?
Mike Murray.
Oh, Mike Murray is looking, okay, I'm like, I thought you said Mike Birdie. So Mike Murray is looking for two people.
I've seen her too. One person.
Yeah.
She was on the last one.
I missed that.
Okay. All right. When you get on LinkedIn, let me know. I'll connect you with her. All right? All right. Awesome. Good deal. Good luck to you. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm trying to get me. There you go. Oh. Oh.
When do you think that will be coming up?
It might be sometime.
You know,
I just don't know when exactly. I gotta figure out my address to go off there, but I can.
Yeah, let's just figure.
Stay in class. If I have to.
Yes.
Okay.
You can stay in class, but you'll have to stay up with stuff.
I love my best.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna start recording,
Good question.
so I usually record class when I'm having a little trouble recording. Let me turn it off. Did you turn it off? No. Okay, let me turn it off.
Show me how.
I don't know if you can from there, but I
didn't think so either.
Okay.
A lot of
All right,
conversation.
perfect. So we got you now. I connected with you.
Came in late, so I did not get a chance to do this. Yeah, I just got it.
Okay, perfect. You should be able to connect you. So,
It's just really nice hearing, to not wait until you know.
I understand.
Yeah.
No, go with attitude and attitude. Like, we're looking for people you can teach. Really. And I
Cool.
not want to cliche, we really are. We'll teach you some of those things.
Okay.
And potentially great kids along the way. How old are you?
I'm 22.
Okay.
Yeah, well, you know, and that's the
Good
instructor,
job.
Nikki,
So, you know, you
who
make
was
it
in
go.
here with her
It may
class.
take a couple
So
months.
maybe we
go ahead
should
and
talk
apply.
to her.
Get your resume, get your
Can we
LinkedIn.
do that
just
after
start.
class? Because
You
her class ends
you don't want to feel like I think people trying to.
Let's see if we do that. Okay, I have to run to the bathroom. I will be back.
Keep going. No worries.
Hey, Brian, I'll be right back. I need to use the restroom.
Sure. And then just connect with me when you get through LinkedIn.
Because I
Do
only
you have LinkedIn?
logged in.
I do,
turn it off.
Okay, update it. Okay, update it and connect with me. Do you have my, just take pictures, tell me you do it.
It's Brian Darby.
Good deal. Well, nice meeting you. Very nice meeting you. Best of luck to you. Good deal. How are you?